Ladies and gentlemen, I believe it was in 2014 or maybe 2013? At one point, I don't know, time has collapsed for me. Something very sad happened. Tom Scharpling, who had been doing the best show on WFMU for 13 years, at least 13 or 14 years, depending on when, went silent. But he has returned. Isn't that right, Tom Scharpling?
It is right, Sam. It is right. The best show is indeed back.
It is.
How about that?
It is back. That's exciting.
It is exciting. I'm excited. It took all year to do it.
What took you so long?
Well,
when did it go off the air? Was it at the end of 2013? Was it literally a year ago?
Pretty much it went off the air one day. It went off the air December 17th, and we did the first new show December 16th. So.
Oh, all right. Well, there's some symmetry there, I guess.
Yeah, pretty dramatic.
Wow. So, welcome to internet casting, buddy.
Oh, thank you. It's exciting to be here. The first time you ever said welcome to anything to me was after I had sunk about $1,200 into a Midnight Pajama Jam video, and it was ill-fated, I guess is the proper way to describe what happened to it. And you said, welcome to show business.
I remember the show. John Benjamin somehow convinced you to bankroll. Listen, let me tell you something about investing in John Benjamin, okay? Investing anything in John Benjamin. He still owes me hundreds of dollars from our electricity bill from living in Somerville, Massachusetts 22 years ago. And somehow Scharpling, and this was like what, like in 2002?
Something like that. It must have been very early. I was doing the radio show at that point. It must have been 2002, 2003 at the latest.
And somehow Benjamin convinced you to shoot and produce a DVD of his show. And I just remember thinking like, oh God, I don't think you understand what you have stepped into.
I did not understand what I stepped into, and now I think another decade has passed, and I'm stepping into another thing that I don't understand what I stepped into. What are you going to do?
You and I have a similar problem, right? Like that we're like cottage.
Losers.
Yes, we're
losers. We don't fit with the winners, and the winners just keep winning.
That's right.
And we keep trying to find ways to qualify our things as wins, as a way to not want to jump off a roof.
I'll tell you something. The only thing that I think we should be celebrating is that somehow you and I both did not manage in the late, in the early 90s to get into the typewriter business.
Yeah, that's the only thing that we did not go heavy on Corona stuff.
I think like investing in a radio on some level, but I mean, podcasts are very big now, though. I mean, I've heard
about the Serial. It's very exciting. Apparently, that podcasts are a thing now.
Have you listened? Have you listened to Serial?
No, I have no time. But I don't even have anything against it. But now that everybody's frustrated with it, it's like, okay, well, that I just saved 13 hours of my life, I guess, by not listening to this thing that you're all bummed out about.
I listen to it, and I don't listen to podcasts that often, but I've my resolution for 2015 is to sort of just be to jump into the medium a little bit. I mean, NPR has that advantage in that their shows are so well produced. There's so much money that they spend on each one of their radio shows that they make for very good podcasts. But what struck me was like all of the advertisers that I hear on that Serial, which is the biggest podcast ever, whatever. By miles. Are the same people who have advertised on this show. Like, like the model still has not broken out. It's all sort of, somewhat, it's not penis pumps and gold, but it is.
It's not Ford.
Right, exactly.
Or Coca-Cola.
Right.
Either. They're still staying so far away from this thing that just we'll wait I think we'll stay with football games.
Right, exactly.
It's
all right. So tell us about, I don't know, people should be familiar with your show, but here's my question for you now. Like, what is the show called? The best show? And that's it. Not on anything. Why not the best show on the internet?
Well, that sounds like such a qualifier. That's no fun.
But you used to be the best show on WFMU. I mean, is it really? Can you really take that leap? I mean, from one station to everything? Better than Serial?
Okay, so it's even better than Serial. How about well, I named it before Serial started, so I might have to make it the second best show after Serial. I actually don't know why I'm picking on Serial. I have nothing against this thing.
Oh, come on. What do you have? Let me tell you, because you're when you get on radio, you get a little bit acerbic, but you're like a sort of like a gentle giant in some ways.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, you're a very, very, you're very, very, just sort of. Because you would hang around with comedians, right? That's when I met you, and musicians too, and that's probably where you get that.
Sure. I just wasn't a lapdog for comedians. I was a lapdog for musicians too.
Well, maybe that's why you weren't usually people who hang around with comedians, particularly back in the day when we first met. Now, when you hang around with comedians, I think social media has ruined it, and we've talked about this a little bit before, but. But comedians were acerbic and mean, and you were never like that. So what I want from you now is what do you have against who? I mean, you don't have anything against Serial, but then who do you have something against?
Oh, look, all I do is complain about people on the radio. It's just a 3-hour moan fest about me just wondering why I don't have what other people have.
But I think some of that's contrived. I want the real story.
The real story? Well, name names, and I'll go thumbs up or thumbs down.
All right. Well, let's see. Let's do this. Let's start with Maron. Come on.
What? He's great. He's been he's a good friend, and him and Brendan McDonald have just been.
Well, no, Brendan's great.
Yeah,
Brendan's great.
Of course Brendan's great.
Brendan's great.
I still can't believe you have not sat down across from him for an hour-long conversation yet.
That's what I wanted to hear. At least Maron called to the. Somebody tweet this out immediately. That Tom Scharpling just called out Mark Maron for not having me on his program.
I did not call him out.
Well,
you're on 11 of his live shows, but he hasn't sat down face to face with you yet, which I feel like should be the 1,000th episode of WTF. Like, I don't know what could top that.
How many episodes have they done though at this point?
I think they're in the 500s now. So
wait, I got to wait another
4 years. So just hang in there, buddy. It's 2019. It's kind of right around the corner.
My God, that's like literally at that point he'll be walking around with the people doing the census, going through doing interviews, and then we get to Seder.
Yeah, well, that's where I'll be after this thing goes belly up.
Now, come on, now, the amazing thing that why your show was so perfect for what you're doing now was that it seems to me that by the time you were wrapping up that show, most of your callers, I mean, you would still obviously, because you were on terrestrial radio, you were getting people listen in terms of terrestrially, but you had, I would say the ratio was dramatically different than any other sort of local show in any format anywhere in terms of how many people listened across the country versus actually on their AM dial or FM dial.
there was a point when it flipped. The show started as a thing that felt local, and when I listened to WFMU before I was on the station, and even part of when I was on it, it was a local. It was radio. It was you. If you didn't hear it on a radio, you didn't hear it.
Well,
When
there
the
was no
station
internet.
started-
I mean, streaming at that time was all dial-up, if I remember correctly.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the show started in 2000, but I would say around 2005 when we started podcasting the show, and that's when the shift really happened. When suddenly it was not about who was listening over their radio, and it was about who was listening on their computer or iPod. And it just kept, the gulf, I feel like, kept growing and growing. And the one part of the being on WFMU that I could not replicate in some form is the part that I might be least interested in right now, which is being over broadcast terrestrial radio.
How much do you miss? I mean, and maybe this wasn't an issue for, because, you know, when the one thing I missed about being on terrestrial radio, and, you know, we replay this, but being live on terrestrial radio is having people accidentally stumble onto the show and call in. Now, for me, it was like, you know, the people who would accidentally stumble on the show would be right-wingers who want to have an argument with me. And as you know, Tom, I'm a little bit argumentative. And and that's the one thing I miss. I mean, on some level, YouTube provides some of that for us now. But was that ever a big part? I mean, I feel like there were times where you would get calls like, "I don't know what you're doing, buddy."
Yeah. Well, look, that will. Nobody's going to get it by flipping through the dial. I guess. If people talk about it enough on social media, we'll still get people coming to check it out and
Right.
being like, what is this thing? So we'll get some version of that. And I also feel like we got much less of that just because as the show grew and people who knew what the show was started calling, there's less of a chance for those people to even get through. They'll just get a busy signal and then just... The odds were they were going to get a busy signal.
Right.
So it wasn't the thing it was at the beginning of the show. I also, look, I'm cut from a different cloth than you, Sam, in terms of I'm not a prankster. I'm not in it to get a rise out of people to just kind of tease them or lead them down a path that they don't realize they're being laughed at, not with. That's not my speed.
That's not your speed.
It's not.
I mean, it seems to me that is like that is exactly your speed. That is, you are completely calibrated, like you came off the assembly line.
Yeah, I might be doing it right now.
Yes, exactly. Now, I should also remind people, and you know what? I mean, I guess I assume that people knew this because, I mean, you've been on this program before, but some of my most catastrophic failures started because of you in my life, I should say. One being that you mentioned that the show started in 2000, and I don't think I realized that. But I think I was on, like, when did you start? Like in November of 2000?
October 2000.
I was on your show the night that of the election in 2000. And,
That's right.
And I had called in to do a character I was doing around town, Joe Lieberman's fake son. I think at that time I called it Al Lieberman. And I was watching the election returns. It was still early in the evening. And I was talking about how my father wouldn't let me campaign, that I was from West Palm Beach in Florida. And, you know, this was before the election results came in. So we didn't know about Florida at this point. It was like at 8 o'clock at night, I think, when I called in. I remember where I was sitting in my apartment, and Janine Garofalo and I think Eric Slovin were watching the returns, and I was just staying on the phone, and you were letting me talk for forever at that time.
We had a lot of show to fill.
I think because of what happened just like 5 hours later, that combination of that character being from West Palm Beach and the election turning in West Palm Beach, I went and spent a tremendous amount of money.
Half of the following decade was dedicated to you chasing this story that
I made a bad situationist, which turned into a disaster in about 4 different ways. And you know, I've spoken about that movie. And then, like 2 or 3 years later, you were the one who launched the Majority Report. This was in February of 2003. John Benjamin and I came over to the studio. You gave me 2 hours. Benjamin did the live read there. And and Janine called in as a guest, and I beat up on some like Fox and Friends.
Yeah, some like guy who did like Saturday nights on Fox News at that point, and had no idea. Was just happy to get that anybody wanted to talk to him. And suddenly he's like, "Oh, so this guy's just not letting me breathe here."
I totally ambushed him.
Yeah, you were.
I feel like we were all afraid to leave the studio that night too.
There was a lot of fear around at that point in general. I remember just being scared of. That's one thing that I don't think anybody remembers, or maybe it's just the amount of just paranoia that was. That because nobody now it's so easy to say, it's like, oh look, nothing else happened after 9/11, but it's like everybody then was just like, hey, is one of these going to happen every week?
Right.
And that feeling went on for years, and then it finally dissipated. That probably took 5 years for people to finally like exhale a little bit.
But it wasn't just that. It wasn't that. I remember that we were worried that somebody was going to come to the studio and beat me up, or shoot all of us.
Yeah. Oh no. I mean that was a specific example, but there was this constant fear running through everything. So I think it heightened individual moments. It made them even more. It made you think of everything through the lens of what's going to happen to me here.
Right.
This, like, am I gonna get my ass beat as soon as I step out? And I would have times like that. There were people who would make like creepy calls, and then there'd be like a truck out front of the station with its headlights on, and just like when that street was as desolate as can be, and there'd just be a truck parked right across the street from the entrance to the station. I was terrified. That happened. And it was also spooky. That whole area was spooky because that's where all of the ground zero workers, so much of the people parked there, and then there were so many trucks on that side of the Hudson that even though you were in New Jersey, we're still 3 blocks from the water, and it just added this kind of like this constant reminder of just you could have looked to the right and seen the reminder of it, but also just the vehicles parked everywhere. It felt like you were in the middle of a construction zone.
Right.
You were in New Jersey. Really, those were strange times.
Very strange times. Yeah. Very strange times. And
now everything's better, though.
Well, now let me ask you. What is really bad that's going on now? I mean, I wanted to ask you like this broad sort of like what is really like a broad trend in culture that is you think is problematic. I mean, one of the things that well, go ahead. I mean, you tell me. I mean, because I know you think about this stuff.
I don't know. I think just personal privacy is on all fronts is something that's dying off, and it's just a hard thing if you grew up with it to watch it go away, and just the presumption that goes on with people, like just like the presumption because when you go buy anything and people ask for your social security number, and it's like I don't why are you asking? And then just like that, because then it's in the, it's in the system then, and they don't even know why they are asking even, but they ask, and it's just like little things. The way that stuff has creeped into just the smallest parts of everyday life, but then can also have these overarching consequences, to me is a huge bummer.
So the data, we're living in the data age where we're just mined for our data.
Just that, yeah, that really, to me, is something I do miss how it was, and I think that there's a trade-off that, computers where everybody was sold on these things as if it was going to make everybody's life easier, and it's like, I can't say that my life got easier because of it. There's things I have more access to,
right?
But it definitely did not get easier. It got more complicated because of this stuff.
Yeah, well, I think that's always been the case with technology. We're always sold with technology is going to, at this point we should be working, 3 days a week, and we really need to figure out how to work with our leisure time. And instead,
exactly. It's like it's heading towards the Great Society, and it just suddenly. Now everybody's just on the hook around the clock, and if you don't have your phone on at 1 a.m, then somehow you're dodging people.
I got to say the one thing, and I wanted to, we touched on this last time I think you were on, and I wanted to bring it up again because I've thought about it a little bit more about the sort of what's happening culturally in terms of, the within the sort of the comedy world on some level. And I think I touched on this last time about like that social media to me has really, the one thing that it has really inhibited, I think, is good cultural criticism by people, particularly like, of our ilk and more sort of like the comedian ilk. Like you can't get away with being critical of people who have had success. I mean, Andy Kindler does it quite a bit, I got to say. He's one of the few people who I still see doing it. And it sticks out.
Yeah. Absolutely. He looks like a troublemaker or an outlaw because he'll just say, "Hey, I don't like this guy and I'm going to goof on him."
And that to me used to be like, the idea that he sticks out so much for doing that is, I think, indicative of a problem that is out there, because now it just sort of feels like, and particularly even more so with a younger generation of comedians that, that you can't really afford to alienate people because they are doing, they help you. They could help your career by just giving you a good tweet and driving people to your YouTube channel.
But yeah, look, there is a part of it. It feels like it is a balancing act where it's like, yeah, you don't know who you're going to work with 5 years from now, and if you savage them on something in the middle of the night that you can't ever
erase,
undo. But there's also a thing where I feel like there is like this niceness to comedy now that it's either you're overly nice or you're just the worst person ever, where you're just like a monster and you're just like, you're basically, you know what I mean? Where you're either squeaky clean or you're one of those just terrifying stand-ups who just say anything and just don't care about anything. They'll say the worst thing with.
Right, you're either out there to shock people, or you're just so benign and that it's meaningless. And and that's what I'm saying is like it is destroying any type of like thoughtful criticism because you pay such a price. And comedians are the ones who are supposed to, in some way, be the cops on the beat for sort of these cultural things, and they can't really afford to be anymore. It seems like.
Not in those things, because everybody is also on, and I feel it from both sides, where it's like, if somebody says something negative to me, it's like, yeah, look, nobody likes seeing something negative said to them. Like, but if I'm going to have opinions on things, I'm going to like some things and not like other things, and then people have the absolute same right to feel that way about me, to like me or not like me. I can't act like it's a one-way street. But it also comes down to this thing where just like the people can say the things to the people now, and everybody's on the same thing. Everybody's on the same platform.
Right.
And so if I all of a sudden start goofing on just say I start goofing on like the Fargo miniseries, and there's probably 10 people on that thing on Twitter who could see that in 5 minutes, and then just like now I'm not only just saying it to the public, I'm saying it to the people who make the thing,
Right.
which is not exactly the intent of things like that. Yeah, you know what I mean? It's like the goal is not to make people feel bad about the jobs that they took to do things. It's just like the goal is you want to express yourself to just the public, but it reaches everybody simultaneously. So it's a real tricky thing.
It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah, it is weird, and it's almost. I can see why certain people go on social media and they just kind of perform and don't actually express themselves. You can see why people do it, but it's unfortunate that that's where it's at, that there's nothing thoughtful about it, which is why I choose to wait till I'm on the radio to talk about these things rather than to try to.
That's right.
I know I can walk through the whole thing and explain every angle of a thing and show how I feel about it, and I feel this way. You can't do that on Twitter. It's going to come out. You're going to say one thing or another thing. It's just like there's nothing nuanced about tweets.
Yeah,
So,
I think. I tend to tweet a lot less because I'm going to talk about it, whatever it is, on a daily basis. It does.
Exactly. It's the best place for you. You're going to do the best version of that discussion on your show.
Exactly. All right. Well, Tom, this is where I ask you to recommend your favorite Bill Cosby movie.
Okay. Well,
Not
probably Ghost Dad.
Something to watch. Give me an idea of of what to watch on streaming. I guess The Interview is not out yet, right? You very. I wanted to talk to you.
We're a week away. It's going to be in theaters in a week.
You think it's going to be? No.
I can't wait. I was going to go to the premiere last night. I never get to go to anything ever, and then I got invited by a friend to go with him to the premiere last week. So I'm just like, I'm going to finally get to go to a thing, and then I think I, on some part, am responsible for what happened to this thing because I'm not supposed to go to nice things.
Maybe that's what it was all about. Maybe all the other stuff, like the North Korea stuff, is just a ruse. It's just as soon as word got out that Scharpling was going to his first premiere.
In 11 years, I needed to be reminded of my status. Do you think it comes out? When do you think that comes out? You just had to put a date on it.
Well, I don't think it's going to come out in theaters, but I think that they'll. I think it'll be. They'll release it. I don't know, probably in 3 months, 4 months on iTunes, Netflix, whatever, some big streaming service. Maybe they'll shuffle it off to some subsidiary, and
that's exactly, yeah.
And
they'll
recoup.
Like Try-More Productions presents.
Exactly.
The Interview.
Sani Productions or something.
Yeah, or Kobe. What if they get that company that makes like the knockoff DVD players, Kobe?
Yeah.
And Kobe puts The Interview out.
Exactly. Quasar.
Well, movie-wise, I like if you're home,
Yeah.
I guess you could watch Blowout.
Blowout.
Is Blowout. Have you ever seen Blowout?
Is that this is from the 70s or the 60s? Is this the one about the photographer? Right.
No, that's Blow Up.
Oh, no. I don't know if I know Blowout then.
Blowout. Blowout is a Brian De Palma movie that is.
Oh, is that the one with Travolta?
Travolta.
Yes. Okay, I haven't seen it in ages, but I do remember it.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's on Criterion now, and it's just I hadn't seen it in a million years, and then I watched it again, and it's really it's pretty great and kind of ridiculous at the same time, but it's really I enjoyed watching it a lot because it's like one of the last of those like stagey kind of movies where there'll be scenes with like rear projection of them, driving in a car, but then having rear projection and then just 5 minutes later there'll be actual like stunts that it's like, oh yeah, they could have done better than the rear projection. So they're all choices.
They had to do pickups.
Yeah, it's Brian De Palma in like full Hitchcock tribute mode with that stuff. So I like it a lot, and it's funny to see John Travolta as like an actor. Like you just see him in a thing, and you're just like, oh wow, he was once just like a dude who just starred in movies, and then would just star in another movie, and now he's just like this mess that you couldn't think of wanting to see a movie with him in it now. But then it was just like, oh, he's a movie star.
I love it. An early John Travolta. All right, now, so what's the rest of the schedule? Your show again on Tuesday nights, right?
Tuesday nights at thebestshow.net. So you can go there, and it's on iTunes and all the places like that.
Are you going to be on Christmas Eve?
Well, it'll be the 23rd.
Oh, yeah. Okay, wait. So when's Christmas? Is the 25th? Okay.
Yeah, Christmas. You're not that Jewish to where you didn't know the date.
I always get confused on what day Christmas is, honestly.
Like the War on Christmas, that was a shot across the bow.
Oh yeah, no, I'm full effect. So 23rd.
The 23rd. I'll be on the 20th. Nobody's talking about the War on Christmas this year. It doesn't seem like it has any traction at all.
No resonance this year on the War on Christmas. They have to.
What?
I think, the thing is, with the War on Christmas, you need to have Republicans in office because they can't be mad about anything else. So they sort of they have to move it more cultural. Now there's all sorts of things. President Obama's a dictator, and he's cavorting with Fidel Castro, and he's letting the unwashed hordes into the country. So who's got time for the War on Christmas? But when we're in the middle of a war in Iraq, and you don't want to talk about the president, it's the War on Christmas. That's the way that works. So we may not see it for decades, but it'll come back.
Unless the war is over, unless that's one of the only wars that has concluded, maybe Christmas won.
Christmas may have won, but I'm still fighting it here. I can tell you that right now.
You're still fighting
the last Japanese soldier.
And I'm looking on Twitter, and now I see some dimwit saying, Mark Maron, you've been called out. Oh, stop. Stop. Now I need to walk this back.
No, we don't have time. We don't have time.
No. I'm going to walk it back for all weekend on Twitter now.
I'm sorry. We're having technical difficulties. I'm sorry. Okay. No time for your walking back. I gotta get on the Twitter right now and retweet that.
Okay.
Tom Scharpling, thebestshow.net. I will be listening next Tuesday, and then the following Tuesday, and then the one after that, and on and on and on. I'm so glad that you're back on doing your show. It was sorely missed.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
All right.
And, happy holidays to you.
Oh, well, thank you. That is very appropriate for you to say. And to you too, sir. Have a wonderful winter equinox.
You too, and enjoy the upcoming solstice.
I will. I'll talk to you later.